New Zealand Tech Podcast, the voice of the tech community, proudly supported by Umbrella Connect.
Greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain. Joining me today, we have Paul Brislin. Welcome along, Paul. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. I'm good. How are you doing?
Very well, very well. It is unusual times again,
Still?
and
Yes.
again, still. But no, I think we're faring okay. Maybe you can remind listeners where you fit into this big wide world of tech and telecommunications these days.
These days, well, as of about a month ago, I'm now the CEO of the Telecommunications Forum, which is the industry body that brings together all the telcos at an operational level to try and figure out, how do we make 111 calling work? What do you do if you want to port numbers from one provider to another? All that kind of thing. So we are the industry forum for sorting all the problems out, hopefully. And yes, it's been quite an interesting month to join, I can tell you.
Yeah, lots going on. Well, we wanted to delve into a few things from a New Zealand perspective, and definitely let's have a look at some of the telecommunications side. There's some interesting things going on with car tech, and some insane numbers with how Tesla seem to be going. So that's pretty interesting to see. Their sales here are sort of off the charts. So we'll come back to that one and how they're doing globally. Obviously, a big face palm for the folks over at Facebook today.
Totally.
Challenging position for them, and of course that impacts on well over 1 billion people, right? Because they're so heavily used, and on many millions of businesses. Want to delve in a little bit about some of the things that Netflix are doing, and some potentially some of the newest announcements from Amazon, as well as telecommunications. So first up, I was pretty I guess surprised really with the latest sales from Tesla. Over 1,000 vehicles sold into the New Zealand market just in the month of September. And when you think about where we were a few years ago, and it'd be a handful of electric vehicles that were sold in a month.
Yeah.
This I guess speaks to how the electric vehicle technology is getting mainstream. How disruptive Tesla are as a brand. I think the next brand after them is the cars that are, or the what do you call them? The SUVs that are branded under MG. I think they had about 122 sales, and of course, this is not exactly the MG that we all know, but it is that same label, and I think it's been sold to a Chinese company, so they're leveraging that, but a really big gap.
Yeah.
And it's a big stir up. And then on the global basis, we heard they were over 240,000 vehicles sold in the last quarter.
And I think if you look at the numbers, sales were really strong. I guess this is the COVID effect, right? You can't go on holiday, you can't do a lot of things. So new car sales seem to have gone through the roof in the last quarter. But sales, according to the Motor Industry Association, electric cars in one form or another made up 21% of all sales for new vehicles. Now that's astounding, right? So you've got the obvious things like the Outlander, the plug-in hybrid. You've got the Toyotas, they've got a whole range of hybrids these days as well. But we're really starting to see that shift away from it's got to be petrol driven or diesel. Much more mainstream now in terms of electric vehicles doing the job. And I think we're even starting to see the electric ute come along. So those farmers who are sitting there saying this is outrageous, I can't use a Nissan Leaf to work on the farm. What are you all thinking? Even their day is coming, right? I think we'll start to see electrification of a lot more of this. You just look at the UBCO motorbikes, and they're revolutionizing the two-wheeled industry. Four wheels are next, and I think it's fantastic. It's high time we got stuck in.
Yeah, really pleasing, and clearly the approach that Tesla has taken, is starting to resonate with a broader audience. It's still probably a challenging price point for for many markets. But yeah, I think the General Motors sort of figures for their their car sales, I saw a figure a couple of media were quoting, and they said, look, GM sales had come down by a third because of the supply chain issues, particularly related to the chip shortage, primarily. And they were down. It was about 442,000 vehicles off the top of my head there, and 447,000. But comparing that to Tesla doing 241,000, that is not kind of what you expect for a very a young upstart within the auto industry to be doing those sorts of sales yet. Now, if we look at the sort of bigger picture, we look across Toyota and VW, Volkswagen, across their group of brands, then they tend to do about 10 million vehicles, each on an annual basis. So there's still a fair way for Tesla to go, but they're doing in a quarter not a lot less than what they not dramatically less than what they did in all of 2019. So it's very fast moving, and really the way they've approached their technology and how they're doing things, they really are quite disruptive and taking a very different approach to the sector.
Yeah, totally. And when you consider, as you say, the price of them, they're not. I don't think any of them qualify for the clean rebate model that's kicking in. But
the base one does.
The 3
has come down about 25% since it's kind of peaked for the base Model 3. So I think that's sort of probably the big trigger. You can now pick up a Model 3 for a little bit over 60,000 New Zealand dollars, including the rebate. Whereas those of the base model is probably peaked around 85,000 New Zealand.
Right.
So that puts it in a very, very similar price point to most of the other electric vehicles in the market. But of course, you're buying a vehicle that gets regular software updates and improvements over time, rather than being something that just devalues at the same pace as a traditional vehicle. So it's working out well for them. So we will see how the rest of it plays out. I saw Rivian have gone into production with their electric truck, and are really getting, or truck as they call it in the US. For us, I guess it's a ute or an SUV, depending on which variation that you go for. But priced considerably higher price points in most cases. But looks like an attractive product. But we'll see how how long it takes them to sort of scale that business. There's certainly plenty of competition in the electric vehicle market.
There really is, and we're starting to see the traditionalists come back in a big way. I think Mercedes, several of the others have all put a finite finish point on when they're getting out of petrol cars entirely, and that's the trigger point you need, right? I don't think we would have got there quite so fast without Tesla really challenging them in the luxury space. There was always this perception. I don't know if you think back to when we were kids, Paul, that you'd end up being in an electric car, and it'd be like a little shopping cart kind of thing that wouldn't have much power and would have stupid little wheels, and it'd make a funny noise, and you'd hark back to the glory days of the petrol car. But instead, we're actually demonstrating repeatedly that electric cars can be and are significantly better, whether it's speed of acceleration, or, as you say, the software updates. We're starting to get into a lot more self-drive capability. These are things that are all built off the back of changing the platform and changing the approach to cars. It's an exciting time to be a driver. I think it's really a fantastic opportunity to really redefine what the car is and how it works, which is pretty much the name of the game these days.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's huge changes, but it seems to be the newer companies that are thinking about it and able to bring their products to market that are markedly different than the traditional vehicles. And we've certainly seen that with some of the chip shortages, where some manufacturers are saying, hey, we're kind of held hostage. We can't do much now for quite a period of time because of the chip shortages. And Tesla turns around and their team recodes something, and they put another chip in. No problem. Of course, they're reaching this quarter, or nearly 241,000 241,000 sales with the factory in China, which is where all the New Zealand vehicles come from now, and by most accounts are better built than the American ones, which is pretty interesting. So they're continually improving as they roll out new facilities, how they produce the vehicles, but they've got two more factories kind of very, very close. In terms of Texas and the one in Germany as well. So you can imagine. I don't know how far out it is, but probably not too far out when they've got that capacity to do 500,000 per quarter, a couple of million vehicles. So.
It's astonishing, isn't it? Yeah,
and coming from a base of nothing. So we'll see how that plays out. But I think those references to comparing the Teslas to sort of iPad on wheels, talking about them like a disruptor in the same way that the iPhone was to the mobile market. A lot of those things definitely apply. How the market sort of shakes out in 5 or 10 years, it's probably reasonably hard to predict, but certainly it's going to be very different, I think. So it's exciting, especially when you add in the autonomous type elements, and even if they're just to help on a safety front, we'll see the realities. Still exciting. Now, looking at telecommunications, which is very much your field with your TCF hat on. What are the big areas that are sort of taken your attention over this first few weeks in the role as chief executive at the Telecommunications Forum?
Well, it's an interesting time. Last time I was in the industry was probably about 8 years ago, and the industry itself, the corporates, for a large part, were really only just starting to come to terms with the new world order of fibre to the home. Telecom had been split in two. They weren't really sure how it was all operating. There was a lot of infighting. There was a lot of fear and suspicion of the new world order. That's largely disappeared. I'm very pleased to say there's a huge willingness to just get on and get things working, so that we can deliver service out to the customers and move on with our lives. And that came to a fore in the first couple of days of taking the job, because of course we went straight into level 4 lockdown. So the thing that struck me the most is how much more we treat broadband in particular, but mobile as well, as an essential service these days, rather than as a luxury item or a nice to have, or ho ho, you people over there with your technology, that's fine, but we're over here doing industry and we're captains of primary sector production, and that's the future for New Zealand. That's largely dissipating as everybody went home. Life carried on for a lot of us pretty much uninterrupted. I just brought home all the monitors, set myself up here, and carried on as if I was in an office. And for a good 70% of the population, that's exactly what we've done, right? We've managed to pick up our entire work lives and dump them at home. I mean, I'm well set up, right? I've got a home office. I've been doing this working from home malarkey for about 20 odd years now, on and off. I'm comfortable with it. For others, it wasn't quite so much plain sailing, but we're all able to do it. And I think the economic results have shown, the idea that we'd have a long recession, we'd crawl out of it slowly, that certainly hasn't happened. And it's largely because we're all able to carry on working. I think, I don't know how they're doing it in places like Australia. Could you imagine trying to do all of this from home during lockdown on DSL, or even worse, on dial-up? I mean, it would have been an absolute nightmare. And yet around the world, that's very much the situation. So we've got a lot to be very pleased about. The industry, we were briefing the minister twice a week to make sure that he understood where we were at in terms of capacity, where there were issues. And it became clear to me that, this is now an essential service. It's not built to be an essential service, which is another problem. And it's certainly, we aren't built out to the edges yet in order to, make sure that everybody is covered. But 87% of the population can get fibre to the home. And that is quite astounding. In Australia, I think you're in single digits, maybe 9 or 10%. In the UK, it's about the same. It's about 12 to 15% have fibre to the home. They have a lot of other fibre in the network, but not to the home. We are screaming along, and I've just upgraded here from a paltry 1 gigabit per second to 4 gigabits per second because I could. And when you tell your Australian colleagues this, they look at you horrified and think you've got your numbers wrong. Surely you mean 400 megabits a second. I go, no, I mean 4,000, because it's there in the street. We can do it. And I think we're doing quite well on that front. The mobile space is equally as exciting. 99% coverage of the population by next year. The end of next year now. We're slightly delayed with COVID. That's astounding, right? That's 99% of the population can get a mobile phone signal. Now we've got to figure out all the connecting lines, the black spots on the roads, where there are dropouts and that kind of thing. But we are very well served in terms of coverage by 3 competing players. So
and I mean
that rain, yeah,
that's right. And I mean the current and previous iteration of the current government have certainly played into that with the investment in the black spot coverage and so on. The continuation, I guess, of the work that started over a decade ago now on the ultra fast broadband and the associated rural broadband initiative. And I think that's something that's really helped us, as we've had different governments not throwing out what the previous government did, but that they built on it. And that probably is one of the issues that some other countries have seen, or they just have the government has decided to do it on a piecemeal approach. And that's probably partly the challenge in the US. And I guess in the US you've got some things that are done on a nationwide basis, some that are controlled at a state level, and that brings in its own complications.
It really does.
I think we've been very, very fortunate here in New Zealand. Now, we were talking about before we started. Now you've kind of got this range of options between fibre, which you mentioned, that's going to be hitting 87% of the population by the time that's finished. and mobile coverage, 99%
Yeah.
of the population. We've got within the Rural Broadband Initiative, there's the wireless internet service providers that provide a level of coverage. But we've got something that's come in from from outside, which are these satellite-based offerings. And I mean, looking at what's out there, it certainly seems as though right now, and I hope we'll see more competition without completely ruining our night skies.
Yeah.
But it looks as though SpaceX have put themselves in a very good position with Starlink, and we did talk about them a couple of weeks ago. And I've got one sitting outside here that that I've been trialing. But of course, it's different connectivity for different purposes and different localities. How does the telecommunications sort of sector feel about this? What I would say is sort of competition, and I guess the word I'm hearing from people, even the courier that delivered the Starlink box to my place in residential Auckland. Said, "Oh yeah, no, I'm dropping off quite a few of these," and I heard word from other people that are in the sort of rural locations where this type of tech is really seems to be gathering steam very, very quickly. And they're just saying, "Oh yeah, the couriers are say that they're delivering a mountain of these things." So there's going to be a bit of lost market share to our local providers.
Well, potentially, yeah. It's horses for courses, right? So fibre gives you a massive volume of traffic, very little contention, so you're not competing with your neighbours for your capacity. If you get a 1,000 megabit connection, you get damn near 1,000 megabits to the laptop. It depends on your home Wi-Fi more than anything, but that is kind of the gold standard. Beyond that, the outer reaches, if you like, where the fiber reaches its limits, you build out fixed wireless service, as you've said. This is largely off the back of the mobile frequency ranges. So we're talking 4G, and soon it'll be 5G as well. That's almost a comparable speed, but it will suffer from congestion. If you have too many people on a cell site, the cell site shrinks, so you lose coverage at the ends. There are issues like this. Where satellite plays a part is the layer beyond that again. So we're talking about those really hard to build and deliver service to rural and remote locations. And for that, satellite is hands down the winner on the day, because New Zealand is very wrinkly. It's full of water. It's very long and skinny. So running fiber cables and power cables are the big issue, right? Trying to power up a cell site or connect up an exchange in the middle of nowhere, it's a very costly business. Whereas the satellites, I mean, if you put up 1,700 satellites and some of them are looking down into the valleys, then that's by far the better way to deliver. So I don't see it as competing. I see it as an incredibly important part of the ecosystem. To make sure that we can reach out to those people who need telecommunications the most, the rural and remote customers who need to be connected to all the services that we're just taking for granted. And I think satellite is by far the best answer for a lot of them. I do have questions around quality of service, around support, because at the moment it's being treated very much as a self-install. $1,000, you get your box of gear, right? You've got to point it at the right satellites. You've got to set it all up yourself. That's fine if you love that kind of thing, as we do. For a lot of customers, that's not going to work.
Yes, installers. I think installers will be needed, and at the moment, it's more the enthusiasts. Totally. That's it. You don't actually have to. You don't have to point it too much. You have to give it some clear space. When I dropped my one on the driveway, it was probably about
do the whole thing.
3 minutes. Drop it on there, and then plug it in, and internet within certainly single digit minutes. If I had I guess been familiar with it, you probably get it up and running within. It's basically just sort of plug it in and and go. But that's just a temporary positioning, right? Most people are going to need it positioned somewhere sort of safe and solid, like on their roof. So you'll be thinking about it a bit like a Sky install, and I'm sure we will see either existing Sky or related sort of installers pick that up as a thing that they do, have all the bits and pieces to get it attached to your roof in the right place.
All the cabling's in the right place for you in your house.
So it's a bit more of a hassle. It's a bit more money up front than the other things. But as you say, if you're not getting that good results from the other sorts of connectivity, it is very, very nice to have that option. And we'll see how it plays out in terms of contention. Still in beta until I think sometime this month. They're turning off the calling it beta, which means we can hopefully expect a good service. I would, in many ways, prefer that they have a local operation in New Zealand. We know they have a number of base stations that are physically located here now, and those are connected up through Vocus or Orcon Group, as we understand they'll be called soon.
Totally,
So there's it's really nice having that added into the mix, and we'll see what else comes from other parts of the world.
I'd be delighted. We'll get Elon on the board. I think we can find room for Elon Musk to join the telco forum. I do have questions around service and support, as you say. So what's it doing about interoperability with the 111 emergency calling service? How does it guarantee uptime if as the rest of the industry has to, if there are issues with electricity supply for the down stations, for that kind of thing? There are a lot of behind the scenes things that need to be nutted out if it's to be a comparable service. But as a bare bones, here's internet to your house in the middle of nowhere, I think satellite absolutely has a major role to play. So and as you say, others coming on as well. We'll see just how many of these beasts end up in orbit, right?
And I think there need to be some wisdom around where these things go. They're not supported for business uses, business at this stage. So buyer beware on that front. I'm sure lots of them will be dropped in for business purposes, and things like spare parts and local support as a challenge. So something breaks and they need to send you a new part. Well, it's coming on an urgent courier from California. And it's going to take more than a day or two. So based on people's experience so far, but that's how it is. Now, vaccine passports. This has sort of been a contentious sort of area. I think some people don't like anything that sort of points towards blocking certain people, Big Brother type things, kind of a global ID card and so on. I think, in fact, you were telling me about your experience with, logging into the government health portal, and the data's there around your vaccinations right now, isn't it?
That's right. They've got a beta version of what the whole website will look like. It was ludicrously easy. You log in, it says, oh, you've not been here before, put in your name, set up a password, we'll check your email address, so it authorized through my email address. You could do it through RealMe, the government mandated ID service, but I haven't got all of that set up, so straightforward with the email address. It said, great, put in your driver's license details. It checked all of those against my existing health records, because I used the driver's license as ID when I went in to get the jab in the first place. And there it was. You've had 2 jabs. These were the dates you got them. Which deltoid did you get them in? Was it left or right? And congratulations, you're all done. So, and it gave me a QR code that I can, presumably for the app, I'll have the ability to share the QR code with anybody at the door of a venue or, at the airport wherever they are asking for proof of vaccination, I'll be able to share it with them. So that, I think, is hugely liberating, right? Once you're vaccinated, you will be able to go to places, travel. That will become essential. I mean, Air New Zealand's talking about it for international flights. I think they'll do the same for domestic travel. You'll start to see big venues saying, we can open if you're vaccinated, show us your vaccine passport. And then you'll get it for much as we do today at early childhood education centres. They say you've got to show proof of vaccination before the kids can come along. It'll just become part of life along with all the other vaccines that we've had over the years. So I think the sooner we can get it, the sooner we can open up the borders and actually start to move around again, and the sooner life can get back to the new normal. So I'm all for it. I'm very pleased to see it works as smoothly as it does, even though it's only in beta.
Yeah. Look, it's a really interesting area. As you've said that, I've clicked through. I had a RealMe login, so I've provided that. It asked me to go through that again to link it up the first time. It's now asking for consent for my identity information to be shared with the Ministry of Health. It has sent me a message for a multi-factor authentication verification to my smartphone, which is probably a whole another area we might get into another day to do with number porting challenges and things like that. It says they're going to complete the sign up. I need to be 16 years or older. I'm not quite sure they specifically. I'm presuming they highlight that to everyone.
Might just be you, Paul.
Either it's that or I'm just looking very young today. They don't have a camera on me, I hope. Well, they could be watching the live stream. And they say they're going to search for my National Health or NHI number. So so that's
pretty straightforward, right? It's exactly what it says on the tin. That's all
interesting. It's asking for an email address and a verification again. So that's interesting that it wanted to go through a new one, but it looks like they've worked through a pretty good process. And I know that during this kind of window of time with COVID, there have been plenty of complaints around different bits and pieces of technology. Probably the MIQ system has got the most attention. But what I'm seeing is continuous improvement across the board.
Exactly.
And look, this is operating at a government level, and we would like certain things to move faster, but I think on a lot of fronts they're doing very well. I've got straight in just in these last 3 minutes, and I can see that vaccination record for myself on the screen there. Boom, fantastic. And so I guess that's probably just about all you need in terms of being able to, hey, here's my digital record. I'm sure there'll be some variation in terms of the vaccine passport or vaccine record, and I imagine they will name it in such a way that it doesn't offend too many people that don't like the passport term. I see UK have kicked to the curb the approach of having a vaccine passport, but you get a vaccine record, and a friend of mine's been backwards and forwards between the UK and Europe, EU recently, and no problems. Just had to show a little bit of proof, and away he went. So it's good. All moving forward, which is encouraging.
Very good. Yes.
Now we can't leave the show without talking about Facebook. So let's come to them.
What? I remember them. Yeah.
In just a minute. But Netflix kind of caught my attention with what they're doing, sort of getting beyond their core, what we know them for in terms of basically TV and TV shows and movies, and of course started out with with the DVD versions. They've moved it to streaming, and completely crushed, disrupted, and destroyed certainly the competition in the DVD market with streaming. But they have been very, very much focused, and I guess have wondered, are they going to let you get some of the new release stuff that you got to pay for on another channel? No, they're just sticking to their knitting. They're just doing what they do, and they're going to just keep focused on that. And we've seen other services that have sort of dabbled with having a subscription video on demand, which is the category that Netflix falls into, or SVOD. But then they've added sort of some paid content. But now Netflix seems to be keeping with this subscription model, but they bought into their first video game studio and actually started rolling out some games in a couple of countries, and then it looks like they might be moving into other areas. Is this a good approach from your thinking for them? Is it going to help them grow, and is it going to help the consumer, or will they potentially dominate these other fields and kill off competition?
Well, that's always a concern, isn't it? No, I think it's for the company, it's a great move. Instead of trying to, as you say, branch out into pay-per-view and start charging people and take away that model that's worked so well for them, they'll take the model and apply it to a different industry. So getting into computer games, I mean, we've already seen the death of the computer shop, the gaming shop market. It's all delivered online, right? And if you've plugged in, you've got a 4K TV, you're all set up, ready to go. Why would you not also think about game development, game boxes, something sitting under the TV that lets you connect a controller up, and away you go. So I think it's a fascinating move for them. I don't think they're big enough to be a threat to Steam, which is the big gorilla in the market, the elephant in the room, if you will, that moved first with all of this, got out of game development, got into being a platform. They have their own foibles and their own issues, as all these things do. But I think if Netflix plays its cards well, there's definitely a niche for that mainstream, perhaps non-serious gamer, the casual gamer who might want to log in and out periodically. And you're already starting to see this with some of the other platforms, of course. Apple's played with it. You can now subscribe to Apple games as a category and just play games on your phone and on your device. Potentially for Netflix, this brings it to the home computer, the home TV market. So highly entertaining for them. And of course, they're also talking about branching out into other areas, and off the back of their very successful Drive to Survive series. Somebody asked them last week about Formula One as a franchise. And the answer was, well, we didn't bid at all last time it came up for rights, but you might want to keep an eye on what happens next. And I can well see them getting stuck into a franchise like Formula One or the Olympics, or something concrete and finite that they can deliver to an audience without all the rest of the noise that goes with it. And I think it's a good time to be disrupting the TV market in this way. They've done dramas, comedy, television, as you've said. There's plenty of other scope. There's news. There's sport. Those are two sitters that are ripe for disruption. So more power to them, I say.
Yeah, look, I mean, I find it fascinating. Of course, they've now got a good feel across their customer base, who is interested in Formula One, because they've had so much content, down that track that they've produced. There's the new Schumacher documentary, as well. There's quite a bunch of content in there, so they would be very well positioned to understand what sort of an opportunity that would be for them. And I'm sure, like others, they're looking how to create the most sticky relationship. On the flip side, I guess there's that aspect that concerns me a little bit, where these big companies that have got incredibly deep pockets can dominate so much that there becomes no more room for local competition. And so, this is something we've wondered about with, say, our retailers and our supermarkets here in New Zealand. When's Amazon coming, and are they going to, completely, crush everything else in the New Zealand market? Obviously, Netflix has kind of already done that in streaming. In the New Zealand market, they have such huge and such big dominance, very, very hard to compete against them. And when you look at the market share they have versus the competition, look, they're very much in the driver's seat, you could say. And so, as these global entities sort of, come into local markets, it just takes, a mistake or two, from our existing brands, be it that they're too slow, they don't innovate fast enough, they don't disrupt themselves. And, I guess this is probably where I've been, occasionally critical of, of Sky in years gone by. I think they're playing a bit better, currently, and, all the best to how they go. But there does seem to be a risk, and it's going to continue to get harder, and we'll see how it plays out in other fields. But that's kind of, I guess, I see a bit of the flip side, and from a customer perspective, very nice if you can just go to one company, get it all for a reasonable price. Of course, what tends to happen is the prices go up. And we've already seen Netflix increase their prices, a reasonable chunk since they've, since they've come into the New Zealand market. And so, I'm kind of curious how it plays out. It'll certainly be something that we keep watching. And of course, many of us have got subscriptions across a whole lot of services now. So
I'm looking at them here. I've got half a dozen. It's maybe one or two would be quite nice. But to your point, when you give them the power, then they start to tighten up the screws, and that becomes a problem.
Yeah, and I guess it's partly my same concern with the likes of Starlink and other international players in the telecommunications market. Getting it right in terms of regulation for them to be able to operate. What does it mean? The more New Zealand income from Kiwis going off to international players rather than going into putting money into local-based companies. And we have thousands of people across the telecommunications sector here in New Zealand. And it's great to know that, a good chunk of what we spend goes right back into the local economy. But of course, with the likes of Starlink, most of that money is going to go a long way away. And yes, we do get some benefits of it, but it is very, very different. And I guess, some of these things, it's just going to be natural that they're going to have to be big global companies that do it, like what we're seeing from, the AWSs and Microsofts in terms of their, hyperscale cloud services. Pretty hard to get an equivalent elsewhere. So we have Facebook's. I don't know. I was going to call it their big face palm today. What a shambles!
What a complete shambles
of 6 hours or so.
Yeah. At prime time in the US as well, so it wasn't limited to just a few Kiwis who couldn't get online, and not just Facebook itself, but also Instagram and WhatsApp totally offline, totally inaccessible for, as you say, 6 or 7 hours, which in internet terms is, it's like dog years, right? It's a very long time, and a self goal, an own goal. They appear to have taken themselves off the internet and made it impossible for anybody to see them, to such an extent that Facebook, of course, being very cocky, I'm reliably informed that Facebook staff used Facebook as a communications tool within the company, so they couldn't email each other. And then on top of that, they actually used Facebook as their ID card management tool, so they couldn't get access to the servers in order to reboot anything. So red faces and egg on the face all the way around. It's cost $6 or $7 billion overnight. The share price has come down. That'll bounce back, I'm sure. But it's a pure indication of just the breadth and depth of this company's reach these days into everything from small business trying to advertise their wares, right through to people staying in touch with family, all the way through to ad tech at its most extreme. And to have all of it pulled offline, I think it really does demonstrate just the scale of the company and the potential. You talked about worrying about Netflix. Well, I'm much more worried about Facebook dominating so many areas of life. I think it'll be a wake-up call for a number of regulators around the world to say, well, we might need to have a much closer look at the way this company operates and just what power we've given them to control huge aspects of everybody's lives.
Yeah, I mean it's true that they are used by so many people. There's so much reliance on them, and this was it keeps being made obvious to me in varying ways. And I will sometimes warn people I talk to who are maybe heavily reliant on Facebook for their businesses.
Totally.
As to how dangerous that can be. I've had 3 people I can think of in particular who have had really major issues with their business because of mistakes made in relation to Facebook. And these aren't necessarily Facebook issues that you can put all the blame on Facebook for.
No.
But if you get banned from Facebook, if you do XYZ and you lose access to your account, if you don't have multi-factor, well, the implications of this when your account gets compromised or you get booted off the platform it doesn't really line up. And Facebook lacks the we've seen today that they obviously have some shortcomings in their own business continuity, which that's the case for every single organization on the planet. You can't account for every single thing that will happen. No. There will be unexpected things. This one is really embarrassing for them because of just how big it is. But when for instance, friend of mine, Paul Russell, he used to be in a Kiwi band called Supergroove as their drummer. He's done a lot of stuff with Shay Fu and has had his own bands over the years. His new band, Midwave Breaks, they were getting ready to do a tour, new music and so on, and his account got hacked. And we've been working with some help from Facebook, but they didn't have any way to roll him back to how he was before the hack. So he might have got back to his account, but then you've got varying kind of ad accounts and ways to run your ads and so on. And there just don't seem to be the mechanisms to go back to a particular date on those things, which if it was any other area of technology, that a business relies on, people would be up in arms. But there's no one you can call at Facebook. It is very much sort of talk to the hand. When it comes to Facebook, and it seems like they've kind of done that to themselves on this occasion. They've been speaking to their own hand because the way they sort of lock themselves out here has really messed things up. And I don't think we should underestimate the impact that it has, particularly on those sort of smaller business owners who rely on on Facebook as the entry into their business. And certainly I've talked to business owners who their online presence is Facebook. There's not a website. There's not an email address. It's just Facebook. So if Facebook goes down or Facebook kicks them to the curb, they no longer have a business. Totally. So this one's definitely very much on the shocking end of the scale for me, Paul.
Oh, it really is, and you're quite right, especially here in New Zealand at the moment, where we've got. I was thinking about Instagram. A lot of the cafes and restaurants around town use Instagram as their webpage. And if Instagram's not around, you can't even ring them. There's no way for them to communicate with customers. And during a lockdown period, that's the end of the line. That's yet another nail in the coffin, and that makes life very difficult for small business. But much like you, I've advised clients in the past not to put all your eggs in one basket. You want to have control over your own channels to market. And unfortunately, until Facebook grows up a little bit and actually spends some of its untold profits on customer support, that's just not a viable channel. Certainly not as your only channel to market. And I think, I would be expecting to see a lot of the regulators around the world saying, well, hold on a second, what have we done here? This is giving you too much power to one company to really control huge chunks of our economy. And that's a real problem.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways you can compare it to what if all email went through one company, you had no choice of any other providers. And it's a bit like that with Facebook. And in fact, some would argue that actually their power is more so than there being just one company that controls all email. Before we finish up, did want to mention Amazon have last week and made a bunch of announcements. A smart thermostat that I guess will compete with what Nest have been doing in that space. They've got a robot coming. They've got a wall-mountable variant of their Echo Show sort of smart speaker and screen. Whole range of basically different gadgets, and including a Fitbit sort of style or look-alike type wearable. So there's a bunch of things coming through there. And some of what gets announced comes through into the New Zealand market. We still don't have that probably complete sort of level playing field, but I think Amazon are doing a better and better job at making what's available in the US available into the New Zealand market. And on the Google side, we've had their recent announcements on a bunch of new Nest products as well. So security cameras and doorbell and those sorts of things. So across those two, we'll have hands on some of that over the next little while, and we'll delve into a bit of detail in terms of the hands-on experience there. Paul, anything else you wanted to add before we finish off the New Zealand Tech podcast this week?
No, I think that's probably good, and that's enough trouble to cause for one day, don't you think?
And where should people look to find you online?
Well, I avoid Facebook like a vengeance, so don't look for me there. But on Twitter, I'm always on there. At Paul Brislin is the handle, or you can talk to the TCF directly at TCFNZ.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much. Thanks, Paul, for your contributions today. It's been fantastic. Always enjoy hearing your opinions, especially when we don't agree on stuff, which certainly happens from time to time. All the best with the new role at TCF. I think that's really cool. And we'll look out for you across all sorts of media where you tend to appear as well. So great to have you, contributing to the sector here in New Zealand with those insights. And thanks everyone for listening in. You can of course find us across most social media channels, NZ Tech Podcast. And probably the best way, if you're interested in joining in on the live streams, they do most weeks land on Twitter, although we seem to have a little bit of a breakage since Twitter have got rid of their Periscope functionality. That doesn't seem as stable. Most weeks we're on Facebook. Apparently the stream actually has worked, even though our streaming platform had indicated that there was still API issues with Facebook. But LinkedIn seems to be sort of the best place there a lot of the time, and of course we're on the staple that is YouTube. So thanks everyone, and we will look forward to catching you again next time. All right, see you later.